So thank you, Liz. I see how you've crafted this session brilliantly because you started with story junkies and war, and that's where this session's going to end, I think. So Egmont, for those of you who don't know, Egmont in the UK is the largest children's specialist of books and magazines. And the division I look after is called Egmont Press. And we are the more traditional side, if you like. So we're the author-illustrator side. So we publish fiction, picture books, classic properties like Winnie the Pooh and Tintin. And so every day we are working with authors and illustrators. And we see the prime function or the prime service that we give is to take great author talent and illustrative talent, help it be even better and take it to as wide as possible a readership. And until this century, we've used a really great piece of technology called the book. We've used that to deliver these stories, and it served our authors and illustrators pretty well. It's been doing that for over 500 years. So until recently, we've had no reason to think in other ways. But as a children's publisher, I'm not only interested in our writers and illustrators, I'm really driven to get more and more children reading. And whilst as I call myself a paper fondler and sniffer, I love the printed book. And as a reader, that's the format I love. But as a publisher, I'm increasingly aware that an awful lot of children don't love that format. And in fact, for an awful lot of children, it puts them off. And I think that's really a bad place to be. The technology that appeals to them isn't the book, it's their DS, it's their PC at home, or it's their phone. And so, I'm really excited about digital because I can't help feeling that we've, for the first time, had the opportunity to get our stories to the widest possible audience. I believe passionately in the universal appeal of a really great story. And we've just, we've been held back by this technology, this book that we've been using. So I think this is all about publishers being much more flexible about the format we choose to deliver our stories. So this is where, this is what started me off on digital quite some years ago, actually. And I'm not going to take you through everything we tried. I just want to give you some context before we go on to looking at Warhorse and why we're doing what we're doing with Warhorse. Back in 2006, we tried putting books on phones. I still believe that that's going to be a key format for children, but we were way too early there. 2009, we worked with EA Games to put some of our books on the DS. The real excitement there for me was that we already had a barrier down because so many children in this country already own a DS, so we didn't have to worry about trying to get them to buy the hardware first. That year, we also experimented with our first apps on the iPhone. And then 2010, we started launching ebooks just as a format. I mean, it's now a standard format for us. And for those of you who are interested, we were hopeful, or I personally was hopeful, that the ebook would be the answer to our floundering backlist, the backlist titles that we are really struggling to keep in print. But in fact, what we've seen is, guess what sells in print sells in the ebook format. So it hasn't cannibalized our print sales at all, witness 50 Shades of Grey, but nor has it been the answer to those out-of-print titles or those slow-selling backlist titles that we really struggle to justify in print. Then in 2010, we worked with Apple to have Winnie the Pooh preloaded on every iPad at launch. So Winnie the Pooh was our digital pioneer. And that year, we also tried our first app for the iPad, which was using one of our best-selling pitch book series, the Charlie Stinky Socks. And then last year, we launched our first very ambitious transmedia project with a big young adult author for us called Michael Grant. And those of you who were here last year heard me talk about that. I'm not going to be talking about Berserk, but I'm happy to talk about it afterwards if anyone has any questions about that. What I do want to talk to you about is what I've learned from all of those experiments. And we really are in experimental mode. Everything we're trying, we set up as a hypothesis to learn something. And this is what I've learned. I've distilled it down to a few things. The first is that what is true in books is true in digital. Just as a badly written story doesn't suddenly become brilliant because we put in a pop-up or amazing illustrations. The technological embellishments aren't going to make good writing good. So for me, it is still all about writing talent. The second is the act of reading doesn't change just because it's digital. And as a publisher, we're working with writers and we're working for readers. So what we have in mind is the reader. Reader happens here in the mind. All the interactivity should be in the story, a brilliantly crafted story. It's all there, you get lost in the story. It's fully immersive already. And what's important is the piece of technology used to carry that story disappears and doesn't interfere with that reading experience. And that's why the printed book has been so successful. Thirdly, interactivity for us is about play. And as I say, what publishers are good at is thinking about readers. So play is new for us, although at the younger end of what we do, so sort of novelty books we publish there, we are thinking about children at play. But primarily we're thinking about readers. And of course, that's very two different states of mind, reading and play. And so what I can see from what we've experimented with, but from what a lot of other products I've seen, is that there's a real danger of making a poor reading experience, but equally a poor play experience if you combine the two without really thinking too hard about the design of that. So the design of that is really critical. And then fourthly is content, and I guess this goes back to the writing point, and I guess it's been a bit of a theme this afternoon anyway, that for me the real potential for publishers when we're thinking about digital is where there's a richer landscape beyond the story. So this is why history is particularly interesting in digital, where there's much more that we can be telling than the actual fictional story. And so I'm starting to think about digital products in our world, in the publishing world, as the documentary version of it. And finally, and I think obviously for publishers and our authors and our illustrators, this is critical. I think if the content is good enough, what we've seen is that people will pay. So all this has brought us to thinking much more about the idea of the enhanced book. So until recently, this has been rather hijacked, I think, in publishing by a contractual or legal issue about what enhancement is, and I really want to put it much back in the creative arena. I love Peter Brook's theory of the irreducible minimum of theatre. All you need is the actor and the audience. The rest, the stage, the set, the lighting, the costumes, they're superfluous unless they really enhance the audience's experience. And so that's how I'm thinking about enhancement in digital book publishing. We've got the author's words and we've got the reader and the reading experience. So for me, everything must be justified. Every interactive element, every additional element must be justified on the basis that it will enhance that reader's experience. The thing I say to our creative team and our digital team all the time is, so what? How does that enhance the story? And also, will that widen it up to a broader audience that we're already reaching through our print formats? So in digital, this is how we're looking at technology. We're looking at the broader landscape, how that of the story, and how technology can help us bring that to life for hopefully an even wider audience. And this has led us to our first major enhanced digital book. And it's an app because we wanted a fully immersive, really rich multimedia edition, but one that still had the book as its heart, and one that you would still say that came from a publisher. It had some sort of literary editorial sensitivity, if you like, that you see from a book publisher. So as Liz said, we first published Warhorse a long time ago, 1982, and it's fair to say that it wasn't a hit. It published to some acclaim, but sales were not fantastic at all. And we struggled to keep it in print all these years. And frankly, the reason we've kept it in print is good old-fashioned publishing passion. We just love the book. And we've repackaged it many, many times to keep it fresh and to bring it to a new audience. But the really groundbreaking moment was, of course, in 2007, when the National Theatre put on that extraordinary production, which, it made me think about puppet theatre in a different way. I don't know about you. But also, crucially for Michael Walpurga, the author, it went from seeing a book that was selling fewer than a couple of thousand copies a year to sell 500,000 just off the back of that production. So what had happened is it had widened the audience of the book. It became a crossover book. And we repackaged it for that audience. And then a film director came along and showed some interest, and we were quite excited by that. And he turned it into a pretty good film, and again, that widened the audience. It took it to a whole new audience again. And off the back of both of these other adaptations of the story, we've sold the book rights in 35 languages. So it's become a worldwide property as well. And between the National Theatre production and the film going into production, we started thinking about the companion to War Horse because of the historical background. And we spent an awfully long time brainstorming, thrashing out, working out what this format could be and what the content would be. And it just never felt right. And in the end, what I felt was that we were being constrained by the physical format, i.e. we were being constrained by this technology that we've been using all this time, the book. So we put it on the back burner. And then I saw this. Now, I've been following Touch Press, as I'm sure we all have, for many years, and Theo Gray, I think, is inspirational. So I've always been interested in what they're doing, and I've been waiting for them to do something that wasn't non-fiction. And when I saw The Wasteland, even just looking at this homepage, I just got that absolute tingle, and it was a real eureka moment for me. You know, the beauty in that image is the simplicity of it. You know, there is no embellishment there. It's all about the content and all about enhancing the content. And so I contacted them and said, do you know War Horse? And they said yes. And it's been an extraordinary collaboration ever since then. And I would really stress collaboration. We've worked as a co-production team. And I think it was a mention of a creative producer. I mean, that's how I see our book publishers, and that's very much how it's been. So it's been with Touch Press and Illuminations, who've been on the film side. And what we'd like to do now is give you a sneak preview of the app. It launches for Remembrance Day, so 11th of November. So this is really as a sneak preview. And I'm going to hand over to my colleague Tim Jones, who is the co-producer on the app.
Hello. I actually need about 5 hands, I think, to operate the iPad, the microphone, and everything. So please do bear with me while I just get set up here. And there we are. Apologies, it's slightly green. So if you could put your anti-green glasses on, that would be great. So, as Cally said, what this is about is a complete experience of the novel and a complete experience of the story. And it's not just about the fictional side of it, it's also about the real-life background behind it. But what we wanted to do with the app, this is the landing screen for the app, and you can see at the top here that the novel is at the heart of the app. And you scroll through here, these are the different chapters of the book, and they have a parallax view that really brings those to life. And you can tap on a chapter, and then you can see that's the full text of the novel. And also these beautiful watercolour illustrations, which you can pinch zoom. And you also have you can basically navigate the book as you would with any print book. You can see the chapters there, and you can select chapters from that drop-down. We also have a complete audiobook reading that's synced to the text by the author. So Michael Morpurgo has read the entire novel. I'll just play a little bit of that. And you can see that the text is synced with the audio, sentence by sentence, all the way through. But one of the most wonderful features of this is that the story itself is a linear experience. It starts at the beginning of just before the war, the First World War begins, and it runs through to the end of the war. So what we've done is created this feature called the timeline, and what that does is it appears. I'm pressing the button on the top right there. It appears here on the right hand side, and it's geared with the text. So you can scroll all the way through the text, and whilst you're doing that, the timeline is moving at a relative pace to the events of the story. And what this does is it just tells you the complete story of the real life events of Warhorse and a bit of background. So it's placing the story in context too. And that's also, timeline is also accessible from this home screen. So I just want to go in there and show you a few of the things that the timeline features. And this there's an extraordinary wealth of material that's in here. There's quotations, there's maps, there's audio, there are films, there are all manner of extra material that's really enhancing the story. You can access that by a little drop down here that allows you to go to different areas, different months in the war and beforehand. So here I've just gone to 1914, and there is the entry of the first event that kicks off the war, the assassination of Franz Ferdinand. And you can see a map just above there, which is placing the story in context. And down here, closer to the actual book itself, you've got documentary material that really shows you what the real world story was actually like. So here we have amazing documentary photographs of horses contemporary to the story, so you can see what those horses actually looked like when they were ploughing the fields pre-war. And another one of the wonderful features is it allows you to see real documents too. So here's at the time in the story where Albert is actually thinking of joining up and following Jerry, the horse, to war. In the timeline, you can see the kind of material that was produced by the government to entice people to join up. So you can see the kind of pressure that Albert is under to join up. And there's Lord Kitchener there asking people to do so. One of the things that Touch Press have really made their own is the use of rotational photography in apps. And this is something that I think really brings a kind of museum experience to your iPad. So this here is within the app, there's about 35 of these objects. And they are photographed through 360 degrees, which allows you to rotate them. And these are from museums all around the world, from a museum in Kansas, in Belgium, and here in London. And you can see that I'm basically using my finger there to rotate the statue there. And that statue basically shows what the tack that a horse would have had during the First World War. So back to the home screen again. And I think this is my favourite feature, which is what we call the Insights videos, which I'm going to tap on the bottom right here. And what the Insights are is a unique video filmed for the app, which goes into a lot of background and is basically the story told by experts and by Michael, the author himself. So we took Michael back to his hometown, which is where the book begins, and he talks us through. He gives us basically a guided tour of Iddesleigh and Devon. We also have an expert from the In Flanders Fields Museum in Belgium who takes us through the battlefields, and you actually get to see that real-life location. And I'm just going to play you a quick snippet of one here. This is a gentleman called Julian Farrance, who is a museums officer in the National Army Museum in London. So I'll just play this one for you.
Stories are quite grim. Now, some of the objects that help us to demonstrate that are things like this, and this is a farrier's axe. Now, a farrier is a soldier in a cavalry regiment or in a corps regiment who looks after the horses, particularly the horses' feet. He looks after putting shoes and things like that. And you might say, well, why does a guy who needs to look after a horse's foot need something like this? It's pretty brutal. It helps to look after horses, particularly when they've been badly injured, because if a horse is badly injured and in a lot of pain, this is going to be useful.
And I won't tell you how it's going to be useful. But you can see here along the bottom, there's extra material the whole time, and this is something that we've learned through the process, is that actually what people really like is to have more than one thing to focus on. Almost, you have the film there, and you also have the subtitles, but underneath is lots of extra material, just basically all the time enhancing your experience. And there's about 40 videos there, which are a huge mix of people, as I say, from museums around the world. We also we went to the Kansas Museum. When we were creating this app, what we're really imagining is somebody in Arkansas who may have seen the film or may have read the book, but is entranced by the story and really just wants to find out more about it. And so we assume sort of no knowledge, almost. And that's why things like this, where you've got real experts talking to the people personally, that it really enhances the experience. And as if that were not enough, we also have our final feature, which is the performance, which is again something which we wanted to give to people who would never have the experience to do so in person. And that is, we filmed Michael and two of his colleagues, musicians, who created the songs for the stage show in a live performance in the Union Chapel in Islington, and we filmed that up in front of a live audience, so you've got a real sense of ambience there. Again, your child in Arkansas is never going to have the chance to see Michael tell that story to them in person, so this is a real opportunity for them to do so. I'll just give you a brief snippet of that. So the way it works is you actually have in the portrait mode, you can see the video playing on the top half. In landscape mode, that'll go full screen, so you'll be able to see it full screen, and you can also stream that through AirPlay to your TV. And underneath here, you have the full performance script which Michael used to perform the story, including all of the song lyrics as well. So I'll just play a little section of this.
To many, who glance casually, it is merely a tarnished old oil painting of some unknown horse by a competent but anonymous artist. But those who look more closely will see, in fading black copperplate writing across the bottom of the frame, Joey, painted by Captain James Nichols, autumn 1914.
And all the way through this story, the musicians are playing the songs from the stage show, which are, I don't know if you've seen the stage show, but extraordinarily atmospheric. And again, it really gives that experience which you wouldn't necessarily be able to have yourself. So that's our app. We are launching on Armistice Day on the 11th of November this year. And I hope you agree. It's a really exciting project. I've really enjoyed working on it. And thank you very much.